Stathopoulos and Josh Phegan come together in an incredible podcast, Grow, Scale, Master.
An energetic approach to drive progress, master skills, build strengths and put the strategy back into rapid business and personal success.
Backed by real-world experience in rapid scaling to playing the long-term game of business, it's the story of all the lessons learned on the journey to mastery.
Be inspired, renew your energy and chase the future with Grow, Scale, Master.
Con, this is a great conversation. It's about really understanding the size of your business. No, come on. So what do you think about Grow Up? Yep. Is it there are big businesses, there are small businesses, there are medium-sized enterprises. You've been inside of corporates. Yep. You've been inside of a publicly listed business at one point.
Yes.
You're in a business of control. You've had one office. You've now grown to multiple.
Yep.
So you've kind of seen it, and not to dispel the myths on current size and whether or not you like it. The reality of it is it about knowing your business model, and are some people cut out for different types of businesses? What are your thoughts?
100%. Sometimes I would never have dreamt that we would be in the position that we're in today. But sometimes you also revert back to, hey, should we maybe have expanded? Does that office, kind of fit the strategy? And I think you absolutely have to have clarity over whether you want a big business or a small business. I think the ones that are in trouble, I don't want to say trouble, I think the ones that probably get impacted are the ones that are stuck in between. They're not sure. They haven't built out infrastructure, systems, technology, processes, people, and they're kind of in that when you get it. Well, actually, you wouldn't know when you get a bad haircut. You've got a great haircut.
Wow.
I know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But do you know they're kind of... sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, we can cut that out.
Yes.
But, they're absolutely stuck in this space.
But are they there by choice or by chance?
Ooh, good question.
Because was this by design or by accident? So in a good market, there's a lot of rapid expansion.
Yep.
But do you actually put money aside for a rainy day?
Yeah.
And that's a nice idea, but do you actually? And so this is an interesting thing about capital calls and what you're going to need to do. And you and I were just talking. We've got some clients globally that are potentially going through some situations where they might have lower cash flow or potentially no cash flow for a period of time.
Yep.
And I was wondering, when does it move from abundance to scarcity mindset? Is it 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 10 weeks or 4 months or 6 months or a year before you actually start to say, hey, is this a break glass moment? And I think that this is interesting because, it's also too about knowing the benefits of your size in your business model. So one of the key ones I always think about, and it's a great marketing idea, is about, are you David or are you Goliath?
Yep.
Now, David is really good because it's nimble and it's fast and you can move on a dial and you're lean and mean and all of those things. But, sometimes you get the perception, well, I need to play like I'm Goliath because, we're not number one, but we do try harder. The old Avis model.
Yeah.
And then there's the other option. It's I'm a Goliath, but I don't know how to be nimble and move quickly. And for example, all of a sudden there are things that David's doing that I can't match, which is you're just so much faster on video, or you're so much faster on what you're doing in terms of your agent modeling or, growing people or whatever. And we're not adapting quick enough.
This is a really good topic of conversation because I think it's a really confusing state that people are in. First of all, I think, by chance or by accident or by planning, I actually think a lot of the scale or lack of is just accidental. I didn't really think about it. I've fallen into it. I've seen an opportunity. I've seen this with, friends in my outside of the McGrath network where I go, man, why did you open up that other office? It's 6 Ks down the road from your current office. It doesn't make sense to me. Oh, mate, but that's a village.
I bought a rent roll and there's 80 properties.
Correct. And I had to take over the lease. And well, mate, who modelled that out for you? Yeah. By the way, speaking about what's happening in the world today, another 25 basis point increase on the cash rate. Have people started to model out what that impact has on their rent roll debt funding? Yeah. At what point are you pulling, the parachute, the trigger or the eject button to be able to go, hang on a second, where's our forward cash flow? And I think that is fundamentally, tying back to what you said, is the issue. We haven't planned well enough. We don't have disaster recovery plans, business continuity plans. We haven't had a plan when a top agent walks out. I mean, when we do our...
Or decides to retire.
Or
which is the talent development stuff. So is this about like maybe lack of forward planning, lack of adaptability and agility, grasping at straws and other options rather than actually like really, kind of trying to anticipate a little bit about what's ahead?
Yes.
And like, when I first started, and we are still micro compared to you, but like when I first started, I'd say, look, guys, let me go and talk to the team about that. And people are like, who's the team? I'm like, oh, me, myself and I. So three of us. But in the GFC, we had to get rid of advice. It was just me and myself. But like, you got to understand the size of your business model and know what that is and know what the limitations are.
Yeah,
so you can be like incredibly profitable, solo agent on your own.
Yep.
Respectfully, my dad does that these days as he's, a little older. But the interesting conversation is that he loves that model. It works really well. There's, no overheads, all that sort of stuff. But the problem is that if he wants to go on holidays, the business stops immediately.
Yeah.
I've looked at someone else like Amit Nayak in your team.
Yep.
He gets to be a part of a business as a business owner, but he's also a lead salesperson, loves it like there's no tomorrow. Paces, he's building this incredible team and great people, and it's great fun, and they train together, and they love real estate, and they love playing the game. And you know what? They make incredible amount of income, and they live a great life off it.
Correct.
But not everything is like what it looks in being a business owner.
No.
And Con, how many people come to you and say, hey, thanks so much for being the business owner. Thanks for taking the risk.
Yeah.
Thank you for creating this platform. Thank you for doing what you do. Like, I bet you that very rarely happens unless you've got someone in the business who's very conscious about it.
I think with this, mate, you got to design the game of life that you want to win. So you're right. I worked for a French mail and logistics company, software company.
You said a French mail company. This was weird.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember they were worldwide number 2 for like almost 100 years.
Yeah.
And I said to Gilles, and I said, Gilles, when are we going to be, I was 19, when are we going to be number 1? And I remember him taking a puff of his cigarette and that French kind of look, and he goes, it is more profitable to be number 2. So that always got me thinking about what model are you trying to replicate?
Yes.
So do you want vanity? Do you want ego? I've got 6 officers and, blah, blah, blah. So I think this is a very important time we're having this conversation, particularly coming into the last quarter of the fin year when you're actually, looking at your rolling forecast, you're trying to do your budgets ready for FY27. What assumptions have you put into your model, and what are the scenarios? Should the interest rates go up? Should you lose an agent? Should you onboard an agent? Have you actually? So this is a very, very pertinent time.
And the interesting conversation is that, like, I think about like small and nimble but highly efficient and capable is a great skill, as opposed to, respectfully, sometimes a business can have a bit of excess, and it's not right sized.
Yes.
So when you think about it, I go into a business and I go, okay, great. What are the strengths that this business has? So literally, is it past clients? Is it past market appraisals? Is it landlords? Is it size of rent roll? Is it quality of staff? Is it geographical locations? And then what are the strengths now that this business needs to develop? Oh, you know what? It needs a proper head of sales.
Yep.
It needs a better strategy around PM and takeovers. It needs to get really clear about how it can actually have more funding set aside for expansion opportunities when they arise. And I think that this is the problem is that there's kind of like this disease of abdication that because it's not an issue today, let's just not think about it, as opposed to saying, well, it's going to become an issue at some point in time. And I've walked into businesses where I go, you guys will have a succession issue within 2 years.
Yep.
And they go, why? I said, because it might be a really aging sales force, but you haven't developed any new fresh talent in the business in 5 years. And that's actually really dangerous because you've forgotten how to teach area knowledge, market knowledge, transactional knowledge about the brand. You're not really reanalyzing how do you generate a lead or how do you win a listing or how do you go to make a sale. So I always say, okay, great. So given the conditions of the day, how should we go to adapt? So you and I have had some conversations where we think, hey, there's probably another 2 interest rate rises in the Australian market.
Yep.
That's probably 3 in total for the year.
Yep.
That's going to be about 7.5% reduction in borrowing capacity.
Yes.
We would anticipate there'll be probably more transactions because of the Australian economy on sub 1.5 million because of the first home buyer super saver scheme. We also therefore think that there's been evidence which has shown, I think it's circa 6% price growth up to 1.5, but and anything over 2.5 has had 6% decline.
Correct.
And so I think that buyers are already pricing in
the
actual change in interest rates before they've even happened.
You've nailed it.
I think that owners are not yet adjusting on that. Agents are still like, oh yeah, but like, it's a short weekend and there's a short
Easter's
week
coming up.
But mate, but you know what happened? Like the Formula One was on, rather than actually saying, well, look, this has actually got to go and adjust. So I would say to you that like the foundational piece is, get every mile you can out of every transaction. If you've got a really good sale that your team does, and there are 2 buyers that are left over on that, please go and prospect for another listing of a similar type, because you've now got buyer demand for that.
100%.
And then, work the street and make sure you get it, and make sure you got a list of people to call the moment that it sells. Hey, Con, I want to let you and Emily know that you'll see a sold sticker go up on that one across the road.
Yeah.
It made 3 mil. There are 2 buyers left over. What are the chances we could get them through yours, or do you know someone else in the street that we could help?
So, Josh, this is the time when we got to revert back to basics.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would say the basics that you should never have left.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly, because we've been maybe a little bit spoiled by market conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is challenging, changing, adjusting markets, what ends up happening is people get exposed because they haven't been doing they haven't had to.
Sure.
So now it's about making sure you nail the basics and elevating your standards.
And I think that knowing how to read ahead of the conditions,
spot on,
so that you're adjusting a bit early.
Yeah, correct.
Another a great guy ring me today. He goes, mate, I think that in our market it's going to be off 4 or 5%. I can tell based on these things, and he's got some really good forward indicators that he sees in his business. And the interesting thing is that he's already preparing. Is now the right time to add another buyer person who's going to be in my team, who's just going to concentrate on buyer work, who's going to drive up the private buyer appointments to get offers on properties, to either get a price reduction or to get into a position that it sells.
So just on that, that's a really interesting conversation. So in these type of changing, shifting, dynamic markets,
yes,
this is where people either double down and invest,
yes,
or they retreat.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting which model works. So whether you're going big, small, whether you're removing things out of your business, your agency business.
It doesn't get easier taking someone out.
No,
but I tell you what, giving more role clarity and more role responsibility is always the productivity game.
That's exactly right. And also measurement. You've got to be measuring things. So rather than just going to, spend that money on social or that other piece of tech, whatever it might be, hang on, can I get an ROI on this? Because things are changing, and what I need to do is be adaptable to be able to evolve.
Experiences that rapidly shaped you.
Connor, I think about it that every single time you get yourself in a tussle or something's burning up emotional energy, or maybe he's in a position that's not right, it's actually because it's going against their personal value. And you got to know that. And so you got to know what your values are and stick to them. So I always think about it one of my values that I've really loved and enjoyed over my life is about loyalty.
Yeah.
If I'm all in with you, I'm all in with you.
Yeah.
And when I find that someone has done something that is not loyal, I feel a bit about that, and that's the beginning of me going, hey, maybe that's just not for me.
Yeah.
And I think that this is really important, is that you got to get some definition of what those values are to help you to make decisions.
Completely
and I'm
agree.
now prepared to go and have that conversation and say, hey, just got to let you know I've seen this. Doesn't feel great from my perspective.
Yeah.
It's going to put some pressure and some strain on our relationship. I don't want that to be the case. How could we see that we could tidy this up a little bit more, or have I got to adjust my behaviour?
Is that change because you've evolved at a human level, you become more mature, or you definitively know what you want?
I think it's more awareness that this impacts me emotionally, and so therefore I don't show up the way that I should in that particular scenario.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yet if we're together, it's everything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
If I see you on another podcast, I'm ringing you. Because this is your podcast.
I think you're going through a tunnel. You know what? One idea or experience that's rapidly shaping me at the moment is, do you remember when the iPhone first came out? Right.
I wasn't around then. What was it like?
Come on. Well, before that, we used to have, a piece of stone. And,
BlackBerry.
Yeah, exactly. But it was really interesting. And I've been observing this in our business, right?
Yeah.
And in our industry. Apple created a solution to a problem that we didn't even know existed for us.
Sure.
What are we doing about that when we're dealing with a buyer, seller, landlord, tenant, agent, property manager, agency, your market? What problems don't exist but you are the solution for? And I think now with shifting and dynamic markets, that shift has to actually start with us.
Well, great customer service transcends all market conditions.
100%.
And you would have read that in the Firms of the Future
That's
report.
right, yes, I did.
And the interesting thing but this is interesting because one of the things I wrote in there is I went and bought a set of sneakers at Christmas.
Yeah.
And when I bought them, they then sent me the email and said, hey, I really hope you enjoy your sneakers. By the way, here's a playlist on some music you can play when you go for your next run.
I love that.
So I'm like, okay, great. Congratulations. You just bought your house from Con. Here's a great playlist that you can
when you have your friends come over.
For when you do your first housewarming.
Yeah.
Just don't send that to the tenants.
Yeah.
But hey, by the way, could I actually just give you some boxes as well to help you to start packing?
So they created the solution to the problem that you or they didn't even know you had.
Show up for unexpected moments.
Yeah.
Something that's changing your view.
this is the big one about like power of lists and giving people choice and menus. So I give you an idea, and I learn this a lot. I walk into some commercial, industrial and retail practices, in our commercial work, and, like inside of the commercial world, there are things that you can do. So let's say, for example, you're trying to lease a building and it's not being leased. You can do some rent abatement, you can do some rent adjustment, you can have some rent-free periods, you can do incentives.
Fit outs, whatever.
You can do a fit-out incentive, you can do a cash incentive, you can do a signage incentive, you can do, for example, add additional car parks, you can give early access for works.
Yeah.
There's a whole range of things. And I sort of said to them, hey, can you guys give me a master list of all the possible incentives that an owner could give? And they all look at me blankly like I'm from the future. And I'm like, but okay, so I'm now going to teach someone inside of the team, how do I help them to go, hey, here's a list?
Yeah.
So I think about, your beautiful children, and I go to Nikki, I go to Gabe. If I wanted to teach them how to be really good in commercial, as an example, wouldn't I go, oh, Nikki, by the way, here is a list of all the things that you could do. And she's really intelligent, but for her to go, what does that mean? Oh, okay, is that what you do? I was like, yeah, that's a thing. So now when you're sitting in front of a commercial landlord, say, Con, look, we're looking to lease out your particular building here. Here are some things that we could do to make it more attractive, given that there are 50 other buildings that are currently available in the retail street.
I love that.
Could we do this? Could we do this? Could we do this? Now, the landlord's going to sit in front of her and go, we're not doing that, we're not doing that, we're not doing that, we're not doing that, but we could do that.
Yeah, and that one we'll definitely do.
Yeah, and so then all of a sudden, like, we're making her more intelligent in something that she had not yet done super fast because we've got systems. Why don't we do that in residential property management when all of a sudden we can't get a tenant on a property?
Completely agree.
Do we put up a sign? Do we change photos? Do we style it? You know, what are the things that we do to make that happen?
Yeah.